Hi, welcome to a new episode of Engineering Rebuilt.
Do you think you know a lot about construction?
Maybe we can provide a fresh perspective.
This is a podcast where we rebuild preconceptions of engineering,
Reclaim the narrative,
and share the voices of women from across the construction industry. Why not join us?
Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Engineering Rebuilt podcast. I'm your host Yvonne Raleigh, and together with Lina Söderberg, we are joined today by the exceptional Louise Haining. Really looking forward to finding out more about you. So why don't you start us off by introducing yourself?
I will indeed. So yeah, my name is Louise Haining. So I've been working in the civil engineering sector for over 30 years. I graduated as a civil engineer way back in 1991, in fact, and prior to that, I had a pretty mediocre childhood. Really, nobody in my world or family was into engineering or even vaguely university based. So for me to go off and venture into engineering was quite a proud moment for my mum and dad, for sure. And I don't know where I got it from. I guess for me it was all about being hands on. So I when I graduated from civil engineering, I went into contracting, and that generally meant I was out on site, and I absolutely loved it. Being out on site, solving problems and meeting people, being outside, being really reactive and cutthroat and understanding the issues, meeting people, dealing with people, leading people, all of that was exactly where I wanted to be. I really enjoyed it. But I guess then over the years, I've got married and had children. Despite that and having a work-life balance around that, I still managed to get to sort of very senior positions, and I'm really proud of myself because of it. And it doesn't come without its share of trying to balance all of that. But yeah, that's me. So I don't know if you want me to continue on. So I've worked both in a contractor environment, having graduated in civil engineering, joining Costain Civil Engineering, and I worked with them for over 12 years, doing some really amazing projects. Marine engineering was probably the bulk of it, doing some really interesting Portsmouth sea defences and Portsmouth harbour refurbs, understanding breakwaters and how we build them. It was really amazing. I couldn't believe my luck in the kind of work that I was doing. And then I went into a lot of highways works, and then moved into temporary works, which is really understanding how we deliver and build projects, not just from a design, but actually literally building them in a temporary way to enable the people to be safe, or the works to build while it's not yet constructed. It just enabled me to be really creative and curious about just the fundamentals of engineering, and that really set me up. I had a really inspiring manager in Costain who was the temporary works manager, and he really made me very, very curious as to why things this would be, and really challenge the design as why would you design it that way? Could we do it a different way because it's much easier to build? And I think that kind of thinking stood me up for all the work that I went on to do when I left Costain's into the world of a client, because I joined the Environment Agency as a flood defence. I was a senior project manager with them, and I guess you could say, well, why did I leave Costain? And that was that issue around work-life balance. It was back in the 90s. Women in engineering wasn't really something that was really well seen or known. It was only about 15% of graduates were women in that time, and I don't think actually it's got much better over the years. But I think they couldn't appreciate that I could have that job forever. So in the end, just the work-life balance of moving around the country a lot, I just thought, do you know what, I need a more strategic employer and a role. And so that's why I joined as a senior project manager to deliver their Environment Agency's strategic flood defence works. And they also required something around procurement and managing contractors. So I thought, with all my contracting background in the marine environment, it was a perfect opportunity. And it was. And I worked with them for about 4 years, and had 2 children. And they managed it. I think that's the difference between contractor and client at those days. They really accepted flexible working. They were able to understand you can have a life. It wasn't 7 till 7. It was conducive to having and working with women who wanted to be part-time. But I think I hankered back to sort of engineering a little bit, but I thought, do you know what, I want to have the time with my children. So I took actually 3 years out. I actually decided not to work and just bring my children up, because I thought, you're never going to get this again. And I joined all the voluntary stuff. I joined the PTA. I joined as a governor, and I obviously hankered to doing something, but I still really wanted to spend time with my children. And it was the best thing I ever did. Really proud of my children now. They're 20 and 18. And they're going, my daughter's going on to engineering. My son is doing computer science. And I just feel, I wondered if I hadn't spent 3 or 4 years with them back in the day and creating them and helping them understand how I operate and how I look at stuff, would they have done the same? But I don't know. But certainly for sure, having that break was great. But getting back to work was really difficult. Getting back to work to the level that I was at when I left was really hard. I think the industry really struggled with women coming back into work from when you've taken a break. But in the end, I joined Highways England, as was the National Highways now, of course, and they were really excellent at bringing women back to work after they've taken a break. And they saw the opportunity for me. They saw where I'd been, the contractor that had already done the senior strategic work with the Environment Agency. And they gave me a break, and I stayed with them for 5 years, and I rapidly moved up. They could see that I had great potential. And I did really well, and I was very well respected. I worked a lot in the regional and centralized areas, but it was a really red tape environment, as you can appreciate, working with DFT and that it was they couldn't decide whether they were regional or centralized, and all of that creates its way of working. And in the end, I just thought, I'm not really getting what I want from it. I'm losing my focus in engineering. I'm being sucked into the world of politics and sort of really difficult decision making that was hard to do in a regional capacity. So in the end, I decided to join it was Colas Civil Engineering, and they were a tier 2 contractor trying to become a tier 1 contractor. And that really, I really thought, yeah, I can make a really big difference here. It was going back into the engineering, and it really gave me, I was the head of engineering. I started to look at asset management, because they ran the PFI down in Portsmouth. And that really struck a chord with me, asset management, how you can really look at whole life costing of infrastructure, how you can really make decision making, how you can make data and asset information work for you to then call the shots for the investment of the funding and balancing risks and opportunities. I really, as I say, it really helped me understand that was the area that I really wanted to focus on. And in the end, an opportunity came on the DBFO. What I neglected to say, when I was in Highways England, I did run the DBFO from a contract side. So it was almost gamekeeper become poacher. So I now joined Connect Plus Services as their asset and project delivery director. So helping Connect Plus, who were the ultimate special purpose vehicle for this DBFO, do their asset management for them, and then subsequently deliver all the schemes that come out of that investment decisioning. So it's it's been a long 30 years, and now I spend a long time explaining it, but I'm really proud of what I've done. You can probably see in my face, I'm very passionate about what I've done, and having my children sort of see all of that is certainly something that I'm really keen for them to see and learn from.
That's amazing. That's so interesting. And I have loads of questions, but maybe as a starting point, do you have any you talked a lot about work-life balance, and I think there's different challenges being, I think there are a lot of challenges that we still haven't solved with being a mother, and managing your career alongside that. And I think we still haven't gotten a lot better than that, even though maybe it's getting more attention and more focus now than it had been previously. But do you have any kind of advice for employers on what has helped you along the way, or what have been good solutions, or what you would have liked to have seen more of that would have made it easier?
Well, I agree with what you're saying. It's better, but it's still got a long way to go. And I sort of look back on that return to work piece for me with National Highways, and they were a really great client in trying to push and seeing the opportunity and that richness of all these women who've had children, who's, their brains haven't been switched off. We're still here. We're still able to do things as much as we did before, and giving us an opportunity. So I'm welcome of that. But that's obviously, I think, because they're a government body and they're keen to make sure that they're doing the right things. I think a lot of contracting world probably the contracting world has a lot to learn from that. And interesting, when I was in Highways England, or National Highways, I did reach out to Connect Plus here and Balfour Beatty, and I started to link up with the Balfour Beatty HR director. I remember now, Christina Brown, and we started to sort of investigate how Balfour Beatty could learn and how actually National Highways could learn. And there was the sort of so that cross sharing of information at that HR level and at sort of director level, there needs to be more of that, because I noticed there wasn't a lot of people doing that so I was probably the first to sort of start to reach out. I think it's a lot better now. So certainly here in CPS, our HR person has started to reach into the world of the client space, and certainly a government client base, to try and understand how we can do things better. Best practice sharing, isn't it? So as I say, that women back to construction, but it's also attracting the young people, so young children, understanding what they, trying to encourage them into infrastructure and construction. There's a whole piece of work around that, because by the time our young women put off joining in engineering because they know that at a point in time they're going to have children, they're like, that's not going to be easy for me. So there needs to be much more acceptance and much more saying it really doesn't matter. So that's about showing people like me, I've done it, well, I've learned from it, but I now literally sort of try and help and encourage young mothers into the industry. So I will go and I don't give them I don't choose them over others. Clearly they need to be competent, but there's some sort of, I'm trying to reach into sort of Mum's Net and places like that, and utilising what National Highways are doing to try and attract that kind of area of people, that mums back to work people. We appreciate what their skills are, because I did have to start at a very much lower level, and that did, it's not right. My brain didn't turn off, and it doesn't disappear. So it's about making sure that those women who come back, and actually nowadays men are taking breaks, so it's not just women. People who take sabbaticals, for instance, is a similar sort of thing. They go for whatever reason, they can still come back and still contribute. And it's making sure we don't lose touch with those people if they do go in your team. So we do encourage and act, because we're a joint venture. We're a joint venture of Balfour Beatty, Atkins and Aegis here at Connect Plus. So there's a great opportunity for all three parent companies to work together. And again, we're just starting out in that journey, in trying to sry and share best practice in recruiting, understanding our people and being more flexible. But it's still a lot to go on that, I think. But that's what I'm trying to bring, because I've had that experience. I don't want anybody to feel like I felt, that they've got to claw their way back up. Yeah. Does that answer your question? I know I went quite around the houses on that. So that's what we do here at CPS, and that's we're reaching international highways to learn from what they've done.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it's quite interesting, and we talked to Rebecca LaPrate a couple of weeks ago, and she works for Colas now, which is interesting, and they've just introduced this back to work thing for women who've been out of the industry for 2 or 3 years, helping them to get back into the industry. And I think that it's interesting. That seems to have come off the back of their work with National Highways. And so it's interesting how the clients are slowly but surely driving. And the same, and we've done. I've just been working on a major airport tender, and there's a requirement in there for actually parents and things in the inclusion statistics, rather than just being like, we need this number of women and this number of this and this number of that. It's much more broken down, and so the client is driving the agenda there and saying, okay, we want a really diverse set of people on this project, and this is how we want you to put it together. And I think that the problem is that contractors will always do the cheap solution, because they're in competition with everybody else, and it's up to clients to say sometimes, well, look, this is what right looks like, and you now need to try and do what right looks like. And that definitely helps. But yeah, I mean, I had 2 kids 4 years apart, and obviously my daughter was disabled, and coming back into the office and trying to have that conversation with what was a very old time contractor, and she's 18 this year. But having that conversation with Modem, who were then taken over by Carillion, and trying to say, well, look, I need flexibility, because we don't even know if she's ever going to walk. We don't know if she's going to talk. We don't know anything. At the moment, she's fitting every day, several times a day, and we need to have those conversations about, yes, I was capable of working, but there was a balancing act to be had. And I mean, in the end, I chose the Carillion guys at the time, decided to close our office and said we all had to move to Manchester on a 3 months probation. And that just wasn't viable, because Eleanor was so fragile that the prospect of going somewhere for 3 months and then potentially having to come back when I needed an entire support network to do what I was doing was impossible. So effectively I was forced down the redundancy route. And I was lucky, because I found another contractor at that time, who was happy for me to work from home all the time. But yeah, I mean, the industry is really, really mixed in terms of its ability to react to women. And there definitely are contractors out there that aren't making any effort at all. I'm sorry, it has to be said. And there are contractors that do a bit better, but there's still a long way to go.
I think there is an awful long way to go, and I don't need to call out any contractors really. I think they probably know who they are, but I think they make the right noise. Well, they make the right noises, but I think what I'm finding is that they definitely want the diversity, and then they definitely do that. But I'm not sure they just want the diverseness to come in, and then they shape them and mold them to be like them. And that's not the point of diversity. The diversity is you bring someone in because they are different, and you don't want to change them, because that I do struggle with that a little bit across the. I mean, it's across all. Obviously, I've got 3 parent companies that they're all similar. Is that at a very senior level, they like to shape you into the same sort of mold, but that's not diversity. And I'm working really hard on that here on Connect Plus, actually, and Connect Plus services, because we are, when I say Connect Plus, we're all one team, and we do really try and work like that. And testament to Connect Plus themselves for trying to really push collaboration. And that's an easily used word, I know that, but we do a lot about the kind of people. We do a lot of assessments of, it's not Myers-Briggs, but it's a simpler version of that. I'm sure you've heard of Insights and all that. It's a version of that, so that we can understand what kind of people we are. We do another section is what kind of action logic you have. So, and that really means is that how do you typically look at things? Are you very, it's all about achieving, just tell me what you need and I'll deliver it, or you're about timescales, sort of you're an expert in something. Oh yeah, just I'll tell you how to do it, but that's all I'm going to do. And the next bit is being more strategic about, yes, I know all of that, but actually I can put it all together and be a strategic deliverer. And what I found is a lot of women tend to be better at that space. So here our diversity is amazing. So our senior leadership group must be almost 50% women. And in Connect Plus, it is pretty much the same. And that's because I think we are looking for people or training people to be a certain sort of curious breed, because you have to be curious. It's the only way really to make sense of such a complicated environment. If you imagine the M25 and all the roads that lead in and out to London and a lot of aging assets, you have to be really able to worry about everything, and it's all aging, and we have 200,000 cars that travel around Heathrow every day, so there's a lot going on. So being able to be a bit different in your thinking and not just about delivering is really helpful. So I think that's probably why we've got a diverse mixture of people, because when we do recruitment, we look for not just your competency, but the way you operate and where your brain thinks. I think there's some learning there between us all of that. We've worked hard on that, and all the framework contractors that work with us have to also go through that process to come on the job. And and it's all not perfect, and there's a lot of balanced scorecards that people don't like, but it's all about having a dialogue with someone, not just chatting. It's about 360 feedbacks, and there's not many people like that, but they're learning, because the only way to improve is to get that feedback.
I don't know. I find that it's a lot easier to talk to a woman about improvement points than it is to have the same conversation with a man about improvement points. I mean, I know it's a massive generalization, but generally speaking, in 30 years of doing this industry, men tend to be more argumentative about criticism, and women tend to be a lot more open to discussing it in a more level way. But
I agree with that. I think that's what we're trying to do here with this lead coach program that we've got, is to help people, any persons, to accept that. Don't be defensive, and just be curious as to why someone would have said it. It's very hard. I could be very defensive as well, especially when, I put a big transformation process in for all of my team, and, the Connect Plus were like, what are you doing that for? Why are you doing that? And, and it was very hard not to sort of, well, I'm doing this because I know what I'm doing, and being defensive. So you're sort of, the way we operate is to try and, they call it iceberging. That's the term that the consultant has come up with. But really, it's just having a conversation. It's asking lots of whys, isn't it? Why have you done that? And it's that. And I don't like to say it's necessarily women are better, but what I've noticed here, there are more women. Whether that's the same thing or not, I don't know. But it's great. I mean, it's really it's a great community. But we've worked hard. We've been here now 15 years, or 14 years, 4.5 years. So I guess we're by no means perfect, but and still it's all commercial outfits and all that, and we have to recognise that we're all businesses.
Sorry, do you think there's an element of, like, once you've attracted a few women and you've been able to change the culture a bit, and you've been able to change people's behaviours a bit, then suddenly you have more flooding in because they found a good space and it's somewhere that they want to stay?
I think so. I'd really like to say that that's what we're finding, but the trouble I think I've got here in working in, let's call it maintenance, it's seen as not a very sexy area, and we're trying to work in our space of trying to sort of promote it's about asset management. It's because actually, there's not all the money to be sustainable. There's not, clients just don't have the money anymore. So it's less about people wanting to join us because they love what we do and how we operate. It's more, do you know what, I'm not really that bothered that you're, repairing bridges or inlaying a bit of pavement. You're not building HS2 and you're not building the sexy Lower Thames crossing. That's what we have to try. That's the trouble we have. It's what we do, and it's making asset management look sexy, I'm afraid. And we're actually looking at that and how to promote it. And I think gradually, even I had a conversation with Phil Clifton, the managing director of Balfour Beatty. Obviously, he's our MD for our side, and he totally gets the fact that for all his clients that he works to be sustainable, you've got to think in a sort of asset management way, because clients just don't have the money. So we're gradually turning it, and we're trying to say there's great opportunity in doing the best with what you've got and balancing risks and innovation. You have to be so innovative because you have to be careful with the investment profiles that you've got and all the risks around all the condition that you don't necessarily need to, you might not have, because there's a lot of assets out there. You've got to know the conditions of them to make that investment profile. So there's a lot of risk in that, and you have to balance all of that. It's a great opportunity I think for a lot of young graduates or people changing careers to learn about how to make the right decisions. We're huge, but as I go back to my thing, it's not always what everybody wants to do when they come out of university or change their area. So that's what I'm working on. Not necessarily finding that women are coming to us because they can see a lot of us here, or we have quite a racial spread as well. So our BAME community, and it's quite diverse. I can honestly say we're pretty good in that sense, and I don't think we've really understood why. The root cause of that, I think, is still yet to be determined. And is it because I don't know. We're working on it. I've not been here that long, and I've been here 3 years, so there's still a whole people strategy that we're developing to try and understand the why on that.
I mean, my experience is that you really can't underestimate the impact that individuals and individual behaviours have on wider culture. And so I really wouldn't underestimate. I mean, this has been such a brilliant and really inspiring conversation. I really wouldn't underestimate the impact that you're having just by being on that project with that behaviours and those attitudes and inspiring people to think differently. So Louise, you clearly have a lot going on at work, and you sound like you're very busy, but I feel like everybody needs something outside of all of that as a de-stress or a hobby or something like that. What do you do in your free time, or what's your hobby?
I absolutely the stress levels, I get to the point of, it was about 2 years ago really, there's a lot going on, so I needed to sort of try and relax or change my sphere of influence, and I started sea swimming. And what started out is my friend who's a triathlete, which if you saw me you'd know I'm not a triathlete, and she said to me, come and do some sea swimming. And I absolutely love the cold. I can't stand being hot. I love the cold, and so it wasn't the cold that I was worried about, it was the swimming. So she come with me. We were down at Shoreham Harbour. It's very safe. So I started in January and I didn't have a wetsuit. So I went in, and I can't tell you, it was the most amazing experience. I can even remember, to this day I remember it. And everybody was amazed I could get in and stay in. That's because I love the cold. And I swam. It was only I think I was in there for about 10 minutes. And that was enough because it was very cold. It was like 6 degrees in the sea. But the tingling and the sensation and the amazement of that afterwards, I just had to go back, and I've been going every single weekend since that 2 years. So unless I'm on holiday or something, I never miss it. It's the whole experience, actually. It's not just going in. And now my friend was going for a really awkward separation and a divorce. And actually, I said to her, you need to come see swimming with me. So now she has come, and for the last 18 months, we've been going together, and it's the whole experience: going in, swimming, sitting on the beach, having a cup of tea. The whole thing is absolutely great for your well-being. It's amazing. I'd recommend anybody doing it. It's been a lifesaver for me, and she says the same.
Well, cold water is meant to be very good for reducing stress and anxiety, isn't it? A lot of people say that's helped them as cold showers, so why not do it in the sea?
That's it. It's kept me here. I do cold showers as well every day. So yeah, the whole piece is, and it's good for your immunity as well. No COVID, that sort of thing. So it's all good. I'd recommend it. And but not the triathlete piece. I can't do that. I'm not getting on the bike or running anywhere. It's swimming only.
Well, I don't know. So it's funny what because I am not a triathlete. But I wonder where the line goes. So earlier this year, I'd never ridden a road bike with cleats. I didn't know how to front crawl. I'd never known how to front crawl. Didn't think I'd ever figure it out because I tried a few times. But I got really excited about this race, and I signed up for a triathlon and then was like, oh, okay, now I need to figure the rest of the piece out. And I've done a sprint triathlon now as a test, and you know what, I don't know, I think we shouldn't set the bar so high for what an athlete is or what a triathlete is, because I did a sprint triathlon, I learned how to front crawl. It's so within reach. Like, you don't have to be the best, or you don't even have to be good to do it. It's a lot of fun, and I think we set the bar a bit high for people of what it takes to go in and, I mean, just do something for the sake of it and for the fun of it, and not.
That's a very fair point, and I'll take that feedback. I've stopped myself doing it. Is what you're saying is anything is possible, and I should, even if it takes me a lot of time to.
It's a living outside your comfort zone thing. I love living outside your comfort zone. That's the thing that this year has brought is everything I do now. I think, how can I push myself outside my comfort zone? And that's why we did this podcast in the first place.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily have joined you. This isn't my comfort zone, but actually it's been absolutely comfortable. You've made it so thank you.
I think people expect it to be scary, but it's not.
No. It's been great.
So, Louise, this section of recording has really flown by. I feel like we could talk for absolute ages, but we have not loads of time left, and we have one question that we like to ask everybody. So, what would you like to see change in the construction engineering industry over the next 5 years?
That's a big one. And actually, my mind always goes back to what I currently do. And so at the moment with asset, as you can hear, that the asset management piece is really dear to my heart. And the construction industry needs to understand that data quality and data management is the biggest thing to enable us to do the right things, from decision making to constructing properly to being right first time to be safe and all of that. But I know that that's probably maybe not what you want to hear. But that's my biggest thing. And the next thing for me is, I know you said only one, so I'm trying to build it up. I thought that wasn't enough. And then I thought, well, what about the climate and the climate change? Because here we're trying to really understand how that features, and all our clients are pushing for this carbon agenda. And I really do think, if we're going to tackle that, we really need to put that right there on our strategic objective and really build that in. And we're certainly trying to do that, but not seeing the movement on it. So I thought that, but I thought, no, that's still not big enough. And then to me, I go back to the people in construction. I'm really this is the answer. It's getting people into construction, because I just don't see them coming. I do not see the next generation. And that really worries me, because there's a lot of infrastructure still to either keep going, to really, keep it for the next generation, or to build, or to understand technology. And, it was a real struggle to even get my own daughter to do engineering. She was just like, no, I'm not interested. And even now she's doing engineering, but she's really thinking, well, I might not stick it out. I'll go and do finance. So that's the biggest. So what needs to change is something around how we promote, and I know this is the age-old thing, but how we really get young people, and I mean probably very young people, recognizing that asset management and infrastructure engineering, or even social engineering, you could build a whole piece on that and make it a lot more sexy. I'm going to go back to that word. Make it really interesting. Make it 21st century with technology, whatever it needs. And I think we need to do that together. And I think that's the biggest thing. Otherwise, we ain't going to be able to do the data and the CO2 in that, because we haven't got the people to do it. So got to come together. And I know that's said by a lot of people, and I don't know what the solution is, but it's definitely what needs to happen. That's getting more people to be the next generation of engineering and construction people.
There has to be a really exciting challenge. I know our complex major projects are very challenging, and I'm not going to undersell or simplify that in any way, but there has to be something really exciting in these asset management schemes where what we're trying to do is do as much as possible with as little as possible and make the most of what we've already got. And from a climate perspective, that's exactly what we want to be doing everywhere. So that skill set is going to be hugely valuable. How do we avoid just going down the line of, oh, we need this, let's build it from scratch? Where's that kind of creative, innovative mindset that's going to be required to go, this is what we have, how do we do as little as possible to make it what we need? How do we become really resourceful? Yeah, I think those are really exciting skill sets, and a really...
No, I totally agree. It isn't what I'm finding. Yeah, I guess what I'm finding, a lot of the asset management space isn't, because engineer, I'm going to be broad, a bit like you were saying, Yvonne, about being general. Sometimes a lot of the engineering sector can be very micro in the way they operate, right? And they're very delivery focused, right? Get it from there to there, we're done, move on to the next. Whereas to be in an asset management space, you have to be more creative and feel safe in not knowing what the future looks like. You're okay with it. I can see it's going to get there, and I'm okay with thinking that it's going to get there. But a lot of people can't work in that space. So it's almost like you need sort of a bit of training in being safe in uncertainty early on.
Sounds like a good life skill generally. Can you help me with that? Being happy, not knowing exactly what's going to happen in the future.
I think that's where my life is I can be, and I struggle with people who can't. So I assume people live in my world, but they just don't. And I have to be able to, so what I struggle with is communicating with people who don't. So I have to try and change my approach, and it's a two-way thing, and that's about proper conversations, and again, maybe that's what we're not connecting people with the right things. It's almost like we don't need engineers, we need marketing people to sell engineering and asset management to people, and we've always put engineers looking at the marketing, when I think we need to bring marketing people in to tell everybody else how great we are. So yeah, there you go, that's my view.
And on that note, I think we have to wrap up, unfortunately. It's been amazing speaking to you. Yvonne was completely right. You're so inspiring. I've really loved this conversation. I really, really
Good.
have.
I've really enjoyed it. You can tell by the big smile on my face. I love talking about it. So, yeah. Come and see the M25. The M25 is such an amazing and interesting, weird and wonderful place. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Engineering Rebuilt. We hope you enjoyed being part of the conversation. Please join us next time to hear more diverse stories from people who are reclaiming their narrative to rebuild engineering.